For the past month, I took part in a game jam called the Metroidvania Month Jam. I've done a few game jams in the past, and this will be my fourth one. Since I'm trying to get into the game industry, doing these game jams is great for getting the experience and networking with people. Usually there are a lot of composers trying to look and join a team, so you kind of have to get there early most of the times. But I've been getting lucky and having people actually reach out to me to join their team. The developer had asked me to make the music for each area have the same theme, but with different arrangements. Starting with the main theme, he requested that I make the melody wistful and engaging, with a melody that stands out. I wanted to create a melody with 3 sections. The first section will establish the main motifs, the second section would be a little more bouncy, and the third section would be much longer and more emotional. The theme begins with the main motif outlining a minor triad. The rhythm and general contour is what's important, but it doesn't stay the same always. Since I wanted the B section to be bouncy, I introduced the rhythmic idea I was going to draw from in the second measure. In measure 5, I take the original rhythmic motif and speed it up, making for more motion. Also, at this point I introduced this little idea with the 8th notes, and used that as a lead into the B section. The B section's motif is based on measure 2 of the original melody. It develops the 8th note idea from the end of the A section melody. The entire melody slowly rises to lead up into the C section's motif. Since it's the emotional part of the main theme, I decided to stretch out my motifs. The first part is the original motif just stretched out. Then for the 5th measure, I stretched the rhythmic motif used in the B section. I then end with the 8th note motif. The track uses ambiguous chords to match the feeling I was getting from the game, and then I added a bouncy bass line to make it feel more engaging. When I was trying to come up with ideas for the main theme, I had wrote this track first. The beginning of the track had a chord progression similar to lava level themes in video games, and I thought it would be interesting to lean into that but make it fit for a cold area. The theme doesn't change much in this track, but there's a completely different feel. The first thing I started working on was this thing I made here just to get a little of an idea. This is what I have so far. Alright, so I was actually taking inspiration from Chrono Cross, Scar of Time. The main theme one that goes and it has this stuff. Anyways, right, so I have like a slow and atmospheric opening, and it plays the main theme, which I have in the flute and this synth I patched that I just called Round Tap because it sounded round to me. It's just a weird sound to me. It feels like a steel drum if it was like elongated, or like a wind instrument, a wind steel drum. I want to add more percussion, most notably for whenever the tempo increases. I think it'll give it more energy. Probably add some percussion for atmosphere as well. The The first area in the game is described to have freakishly tall flowers, and I wanted to make the theme light and bouncy. The main motif is outlining a minor key, so I had to find a way to put it into a major key. I actually just made the melody start on the 5th of the chord, so it would outline the major 7th. I did change some of the notes to better fit the chord changes. Writing the underlying chords was pretty difficult. I started just by holding the one chord in short rhythmic fashion. The second half of this first melody was really hard to harmonize because the chords needed to have a sense of momentum, but the melody notes don't allow for drastic chord changes. There was a lot of trial and error before settling on the current progression. The B section melody in this version changed, and I developed it a bit more. It keeps the same motif, but I structure it similarly to the A section melody, and it even reuses the second half of the melody rather than immediately going to the C section. This time, when the C section comes in, I actually changed keys to E flat minor. While there is a C natural in the chord progression, that acts as an out-of-key note as the melody emphasizes the B natural in the last measure. I actually like how this part sounded in contrast to the rest of the piece, so I repeated this section, showing off my Pokemon Mystery Dungeon influence. So I actually was on 2 teams for this game jam. The second team had messaged me and they thought that my music fit their vision well. I started making some random music for it, taking most of my inspiration from Metroid. I structured the piece to have AB-AB form. The intro establishes the background loop and the synths, and a simple melody in the lead synth. The B section focuses on the orchestral instruments with a big and beautiful sound. Back to the A section, this time the orchestral instruments have more impact. I also added more environmental variations to the background synths. When the melody comes in, there is now a counter melody in the bell. The second B section is the same as the first B section, but it has less energy as we reach the end of the loop. I wrote the second track for this game to have more orchestral instruments and to have a more empty atmosphere. The track is one big build-up, so as the piece goes on, the tension slowly increases. Since the accompaniment doesn't really set the chords, the melody helps contextualize them. It's a simple melody that moves up a step, then down a fourth. This is then repeated a fourth lower. It is also harmonized by a fifth below. The melody is repeated, but now it has additional harmonies a fifth above and a major third above that. The piece has been in a minor key, but there wasn't much tension throughout, so now the cello comes in playing a D flat while the rest of the bass still pedals on the C. As the layers increase and things get more tense, the melody comes in again with the same structure, but this time a minor third higher. The loop ends with several big staccato hits. After writing music for the first area, I wanted to write music for the second area, the Gemlit Caverns. So I wrote a small idea and I realized it was a bit too dark. I then decided that it would fit better for the Wilted Woods area. It was described as a lush underground forest that have withered to barren husks. I think the idea gave off that atmosphere, but in a video gamey way. I decided that I wanted to structure the melody different from the other tracks, so I started with the B section's motif. I changed this melody a lot to fit the feeling of the music so it feels less bouncy, more introspective. I then go into the C section melody, which is played softly by saxes in 4 parts. Well, it's 3 parts because the bass is double, but there's 4 saxes playing. For some reason, playing the melody soft like this made it feel more melancholic, as if reserved or you're trying to discover something new. This time the A section melody plays in the middle of the piece and is played by a muted trumpet. It's weird because the trumpet is soft and it sounds like it's in the background compared to everything else. This theme sounds like you're sneaking around stuff, which is fitting because I imagine the player would be immediately wary of their surroundings. For the second half of the A section melody, I harmonize it with the 9th chord shifting downwards. This section here feels like you're just now realizing the tragedy of this forest. The music comes back at full force. The forest is dangerous and you gotta stay alive. There's a short little sax solo which draws from the second half of the A section melody. C-section sax quartet returns at a much higher velocity, and now it feels more determined and forceful. For the second game, one of the areas they mentioned was the fungal undergrowth, which is described to have really tall trees and like giant mushrooms and stuff. Now, when I think of mushroom music, I immediately think of and so I started my idea by making this weird synth sound, and it's in 7/4 because why not? I wasn't feeling particularly inspired by that, so I tried exploring just the 7/4 aspect. Eventually, I switched to 6/4 and decided to go for a jazzy feel because for some reason I was feeling jazzy. The track has the same AB-AB structure as Erosion does. The A section is more like a solo section that I just penciled in. I wanted to focus on offbeat writing because it reflects the bouncing and floaty feeling that you'd get from exploring this area. The B section has an actual melody that's pretty simple and I think brings the track to feeling more lush. If we continue working on this game, I'd likely tweak this track a little bit, just add some more instruments to make it feel more lush. Also, I think the mix could be better. This was the track that I was looking forward to the most. I took inspiration from my track Crystal Caverns because I wanted to replicate that feeling. So I started by picking a random time signature, in this case 9/8. I created a bar-long ostinato and stacked a bunch of notes on top of each other to get a cool sounding chord. I wanted to experiment with rhythm and decided to make the bass line split the measure in half, except I put it one cell too late and I actually ended up with a more interesting rhythm. The 9/8 bar was being divided as 5 plus 4, and it felt groovy to underline the rhythm with quarter note kicks. I then put a rhythmic synth following the 5 plus 4 pattern and sidechained it to the kick. So we have the bass and the chords in 9/8 subdivided as 5 plus 4. The drums playing quarter notes meant it would be 2 bars before it lined up, effectively making it 9/4. This creates a complex rhythmic groove that makes it difficult to write a melody over. In addition, taking a melody originally written in 4/4 and trying to make it fit over this proves to be difficult. I followed the same structure as Wilted Woods and started with the B section, the C section in the middle, and the A section before the loop. The melody is a weak point for this track as I didn't initially understand what rhythmic groupings I was using. Remember, each melody is divided as a 5 plus 4, meaning the strong parts of the melody should land on those, though more accurately it would be 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2. If we look at the B section melody, you can see that the first measure follow this form nicely, but the second, third, and fourth measures do not follow the strong beats. Making simple tweaks, this vastly improves its feel. The C section melody is much longer, and so it should be written as if it's in 9/4 and should have a 4 plus 5 division. But you can see that this melody does not even follow that division and is inconsistent all throughout. Here's what it will sound like when it follows subdivision. Yeah, this track was really cool, but I just needed some tweaking. Unfortunately, it was the third day in a row that I wrote a new track, so I was feeling very tired and there was a bunch of other stuff I had to work on. It's boss music time. The boss is a giant mole, so I wanted there to be a lot of percussion. I then added brass playing perfect fifths and eighth note rhythms. Low strings doubled the brass while the upper strings played an ostinato. I changed the speed of the chord changes to increase the intensity. The orchestra is playing constant eighth notes, which builds the tension. The percussion emphasizes the orchestra, but also plays 16th notes to keep the energy. A solo horn playing a slow sustained rising melody gives a sense of heroism and increases the desperateness of the situation. The loop ends with a drum break alternating between 4/4 and 7/8. A large, dissonant E minor add sharp 11 chord blares in the brass as the woodwinds and upper strings play scattered eighth notes. The piano bassline and flutes were inspired by Ocarina of Time's boss battle music. As the immediate tension goes away and the player gets focused, the low brass plays a low melody reminiscent of Holst's Mars. Change in chords at the end of the loop is a sense of hopeful desperation. After failing to transcribe my melody into 9/8, I decided to write out my melodies first before the accompaniment. Though since it's in 12/8, it would be easier since the strong beats are still divided in 4. The orchestral writing involved making several layers to keep constant eighth notes outlining a B minor chord. Since the melody outlines a minor chord, I just had it transposed to B minor. For the A section, the accompaniment doesn't change chords. I changed up the texture using the melody by playing an A sharp, the sharp 7th. The second half of the A section melody usually outlines some chords, which makes harmonizing easier, but I wanted the chords to change every 2 beats, so I had to figure out which ones would fit. Before getting to the B section melody, I switched to E minor, which makes the piece feel lighter and adventurous. We then transition into the C section of this piece, which gives me chills. Before the end of the loop, we modulate back to B minor. The last theme was the main theme for the second game. Since we do plan on working on the game after the jam, I wanted to make the music really reflect what the story was about. Working on this game was really fun and also exhausting. It's kind of an insight into what I'll be doing in the industry. I thought it would be fun to calculate how much money I would have made if this was a commission. My current commission price is $100 per minute, which I know is low, but I want to get hired. So I take all the tracks before looping and put their length, then convert that to seconds. Add up all the seconds, then divide to get the minutes, and now I can get the amount. The first game had 6 tracks with a total of 10 minutes and 25 seconds, with the price around $1,040. The second game had 5 tracks with a total of 9 minutes and 46 seconds, making the price around $975. So for this game jam, I did $2,015 worth of work. Yeah, so I'm probably not going to charge them even if we continue working on it, because it was a game jam, it's a volunteer thing. So that being said, I am available and willing to work, so if you need game music or if you know somebody that needs game music, let me know. I'm really trying to get into this industry, so if you want to help out, sharing this video will let more people know that I'm here. If you did enjoy this video, leave a like or subscribe. Also, please leave a comment telling me your thoughts. See ya!